Beamy Dan, 29, cop for about 6 years now. Thought I'd seen everything until last Tuesday night. Decided to share the most absurd traffic stop of my career. You guys won't believe this circus that unfolded. Seriously considering writing a book about stupid criminals. But first let me tell you about this particular gem. Working night shift with my partner Carter. Carter's this older guy. Been on the force for like 15 years. Always making jokes, keeps things light during the long, boring nights. Guy's seen more crazy stuff than anyone should in a lifetime. Somehow still maintains his sense of humor about everything. Teaches me something new about dealing with idiots every week. Around 2 a.m., we get a call about erratic driving. Dispatch says vehicle weaving across lanes on Highway 9. Caller reported car going super slow, then speeding up randomly. Typical drunk driver behavior, nothing too unusual for a Tuesday. Carter and I both groan because paperwork is always a pain. But duty calls, and we're getting paid to deal with this stuff. We head out in our patrol car, coffee getting cold. Find the suspect vehicle pretty quickly about 2 miles out. Silver sedan doing maybe 15 miles per hour in a 45 zone. Hazard lights blinking like a Christmas tree. Car drifting between lanes like it's playing some kind of game. Carter mutters something about how people shouldn't be allowed to drive. I radio in our position, while Carter pulls up behind. Standard traffic stop procedure, nothing fancy required. Turn on the overheads, hit the siren briefly. Vehicle takes forever to actually pull over to the shoulder. Already getting bad vibes about this whole situation. Something tells me this isn't going to be straightforward. I approach the driver's side window following protocol. Takes literally 3 full minutes for her to roll it down. Keep knocking on the glass, wondering what's taking so long. Finally see this young woman, maybe mid-20s. Immediately obvious, she's been drinking heavily. Eyes bloodshot, speech already slightly slurred when she starts talking. The whole car reeks of alcohol when that window comes down. Smell hits me like a brick wall. Empty bottles visible in the back seat. Woman's makeup smeared all over her face. Clearly been having quite the night before getting behind the wheel. Carter walks around to the passenger side, shaking his head. Before I can even introduce myself, she starts talking. Tells me she knows her rights in this slurred voice. Says she doesn't have to answer any questions from police. Already pulling out her phone to record everything. Starts talking into the camera about being pulled over. Explaining to her future social media followers how she's being targeted. I try to explain that I just need to see her license and registration. She refuses to hand them over immediately. Claims I'm harassing her specifically because I'm a man. Apparently, male police officers are automatically suspect in her worldview. Says she's not obligated to interact with patriarchal authority figures. I'm thinking this is definitely going to be a very long night. She keeps recording everything, talking into her phone constantly, explaining to her audience how she's being oppressed by the system. Describes me as an agent of the patriarchy, trying to silence women. Uses words like systematic oppression and gender-based harassment. I'm genuinely impressed by her vocabulary considering how drunk she is. Most intoxicated people can barely form complete sentences. Carter walks over and whispers that maybe she should just arrest herself. Says it would save everyone a lot of time and paperwork. I have to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Woman continues her monologue about rights and discrimination. Completely oblivious to how ridiculous she sounds. Acting like she's some kind of civil rights hero. She demands we call a female officer to handle the situation. Says she won't cooperate with any male cops under any circumstances. Claims we're trying to intimidate her with our masculine presence. Explains that men can't understand women's experiences. Therefore, we're not qualified to interact with her. I explain that cooperation isn't really optional during traffic stops. Carter suggests we humor her request just to move things along. Figures it might actually speed up the process. We radio for Monica, our female colleague on duty tonight. Dispatch confirms she's available and heading our way. Woman seems satisfied, thinks she's won some kind of victory, starts explaining to her phone how she outsmarted the system. While we wait for Monica, she continues her political monologue, explains feminist theory to the night air and her phone camera, tells us about systematic oppression and gender power dynamics, discusses the historical context of male authority figures, mentions various academic theories about patriarchal structures. I'm starting to wonder if she's a college professor or something. She keeps calling me a representative of patriarchal oppression. Apparently, I embody centuries of male dominance just by existing. Never knew directing traffic could be so historically significant. Or that wearing a police uniform made me responsible for all of history. Carter finds this absolutely hilarious, keeps making comments under his breath, whispers things like asking if I knew I was a historical figure. Monica arrives about 15 minutes later in her patrol car. She's this no-nonsense officer, been on the force longer than me. Short haircut, always perfectly pressed uniform. Follows procedure to the letter, never breaks character. Has this reputation for being completely fair but absolutely strict. Doesn't care about your excuses or sob stories. Drunk woman's whole demeanor changes when Monica steps out. Suddenly, she's all smiles and sisterly solidarity. Starts waving at Monica like they're old friends. Begins explaining how the male officers were harassing her. Claims we were being aggressive and intimidating. Expects Monica to immediately take her side against us. Monica introduces herself professionally to the woman. Asks for her license and registration in the same tone I used. Exact same request I made about 20 minutes earlier. Woman happily complies this time, digging through her purse, hands over documents with a big smile, starts explaining how much better it is to deal with another woman. Monica examines the documents carefully and runs the license. Asks the woman to step out of the vehicle for field sobriety tests. Woman complies cheerfully, still thinking she's getting special treatment. Starts chatting with Monica about how men don't understand women. Explains her theory about gender-based police harassment. Monica just nods and continues following standard procedure. Monica runs the breathalyzer test according to protocol. Woman blows well over the legal limit on the first try. 0.12 blood alcohol content, clearly intoxicated, way over the 0.08 threshold for drunk driving charges. Monica explains the charges and legal consequences. Woman's smile starts fading as reality sets in. That's when things get really interesting for all of us. Woman realizes Monica isn't playing favorites at all. Starts demanding special treatment based on gender solidarity. Explains they should support each other as women in a male-dominated world. Says women need to stick together against the patriarchy. Monica just stares at her with this completely deadpan expression. Monica calls for a tow truck over the radio, starts filling out the standard DUI paperwork. Woman becomes increasingly frantic as she realizes what's happening, keeps insisting they have some kind of sisterly bond. Claims Monica should understand her situation better than men would. Monica continues processing the arrest like nothing unusual is happening. Woman starts crying about betrayal and abandonment, claims Monica is letting down all womankind by following the law. Apparently, female solidarity should override law enforcement duties. Says she expected better from another woman in uniform. Monica responds that solidarity doesn't extend to drunk driving, mentions they actually work out together at the gym sometimes, explains that supporting other women doesn't mean ignoring dangerous behavior, says she'd arrest her own sister for driving drunk. Woman can't seem to process this concept at all, keeps insisting that gender should matter more than rules. Monica just shakes her head and continues the paperwork. I'm watching this whole exchange with fascination. The tow truck arrives while woman is still protesting the unfairness. Monica explains the license suspension process step by step. Woman will need to appear in court within 30 days. Her car is getting impounded for the next month. She'll need someone sober to pick her up from the station. All standard consequences for standard drunk driving charges. Carter makes one final comment as we're wrapping everything up. Says something about getting exactly the female support she requested, just not the kind she was expecting to receive. Woman glares at all of us like we've personally wronged her, acts like we conspired against her specifically. Still doesn't seem to understand that actions have consequences. We transport her to the station for standard processing. She sits in the back seat muttering about betrayal and injustice, keeps saying Monica should have understood her situation better. Apparently, gender trumps public safety in her particular worldview. Continues recording herself talking about police corruption. Monica just drives calmly and ignores all the commentary. At the station, Monica handles the booking procedure. Woman tries one more time to appeal to sisterhood, explains how women need to support each other. Monica calmly explains that laws apply equally regardless of gender. Says being professional means treating everyone exactly the same. Woman finally gives up and accepts her situation. She calls someone to pick her up in a few hours. Probably going to have an interesting conversation with whoever that is. Spends the waiting time complaining about the system. Still insists she was treated unfairly because of some conspiracy. Never once admits that drinking and driving was her choice. Takes zero responsibility for the entire situation. After she's been processed, I ask Monica how she stays so calm. Monica says she gets requests like this maybe once a month. People assume she'll bend rules based on shared characteristics, race, gender, age, profession, you name it. But being professional means treating everyone exactly the same, regardless of what they look like or what they believe. Carter jokes that we should start keeping detailed statistics, track how often people demand specific officer demographics, see if anyone ever requests a middle-aged white guy like him. Probably not a growing market segment in law enforcement. People always think someone else will be more sympathetic. Usually they're wrong about that assumption. Whole incident took about 3 hours from start to finish. Woman got charged with DUI and reckless driving, license suspended for 6 months minimum, car impounded for 30 days at her expense, court date scheduled, fines to be determined, standard consequences for completely standard behavior. Funny thing is, she probably thought gender would save her somehow. Spent all that time talking about oppression and solidarity. Never occurred to her that professional women might be professional. Monica's been breaking up bar fights and chasing drug dealers for years. She's not impressed by amateur feminist theory from drunk drivers. Has heard every excuse and sob story you can imagine. I've been thinking about that night for weeks now. Something genuinely fascinating about people's assumptions. Woman automatically assumed male cops would be harder on her, then assumed female cop would be easier and more understanding. Both assumptions were completely wrong in this case. Professional standards don't change based on officer gender. Carter says he's seen this exact pattern many times before. People always looking for special treatment based on demographics, trying to find angles and connections that don't actually exist. Rarely works out the way they imagine it will. Law enforcement is pretty straightforward most of the time. You break the law, you face the consequences. Monica later told me the woman tried to friend her on social media, found her personal accounts, and sent multiple friend requests, apparently still hoping to establish some kind of personal bond. Monica declined all the requests immediately, maintains strict boundaries between work and personal life, doesn't want drunk drivers having access to her private information. Case went to court about a month later as scheduled. Woman showed up with a public defender, pled guilty to the DUI charge after plea negotiations, paid all the fines, and completed required community service, hopefully learned something about personal responsibility. Though Carter seriously doubts she connected any dots, weird part is how absolutely confident she was initially, completely certain her strategy would work perfectly, never questioned whether her assumptions were actually valid, just assumed the world operated according to her theories. Reality had completely different plans for her evening. Cognitive dissonance is apparently a very powerful force. I keep wondering what she tells people about that night. Probably not the version where a female officer arrested her. Might not fit the narrative she's constructed about the system. Easier to blame corrupt cops than admit you made bad choices. People have an amazing ability to rewrite their own stories, especially when the truth makes them look bad. Carter retired a few months after this incident happened, still sends me texts when he reads news stories about privilege, finds endless humor in people's contradictions and assumptions, says 30 years on the force taught him to expect irony. People rarely live up to their own stated principles, especially when facing real consequences for their actions. Monica got promoted to sergeant last month, well-deserved recognition for her professionalism and competence. She handles difficult situations with impressive calm, never lets personal feelings interfere with duty, treats everyone fairly regardless of circumstances, exactly the kind of officer who should be getting promoted. Sometimes I wonder if the drunk woman ever thinks about that night, whether she learned anything meaningful from the experience. Probably not. People rarely change their fundamental beliefs. Easier to blame others than examine your own assumptions. Cognitive bias is a hell of a drug, apparently. Keeps people from learning from their mistakes. What struck me most was her genuine surprise at the outcome. Really believed gender solidarity would override everything else. Never considered that professional standards might apply equally. Fascinating glimpse into how some people see the world. Everything filtered through the lens of identity politics. No room for individual responsibility or professional standards. Carter always said police work teaches you about human nature. People reveal their true character when under stress. This woman showed her entitlement and false assumptions. Monica demonstrated integrity and professional consistency. I learned something about treating people fairly, regardless of what they expect or demand. I've told this story to other officers many times. Everyone has similar experiences with entitled citizens, people always looking for special treatment somehow, rarely based on actual circumstances or legitimate needs, usually based on assumptions about how the world should work. Reality doesn't care about your theories, though. Makes me appreciate partners like Carter and Monica even more. Professionals who do their jobs regardless of politics, focus on public safety instead of personal agendas, treat everyone according to the same standards. That's what good police work actually looks like, not whatever people see on social media. Anyway, that's my story about the most absurd traffic stop ever. Woman demanded female officer thinking she'd get preferential treatment. Got exactly what she asked for in the end, just not what she expected to happen. Professional women are still professional, apparently. Shocking concept for some people, I guess. Had to appear in court as a witness for the prosecution. Woman showed up with some expensive lawyer she hired. Apparently decided to fight the charges instead of accepting responsibility. Lawyer tried every angle to get the case dismissed, claimed gender discrimination and improper procedure. Judge wasn't having any of it, though. During testimony, the woman kept glaring at me and Carter, but especially at Monica, who was also called as a witness. Monica's testimony was absolutely perfect and professional, detailed every step of the arrest procedure, explained exactly why each action was necessary and legal. Judge complimented her thoroughness and professionalism. Woman's lawyer tried to argue that she was targeted unfairly, claimed the stop was pretextual and based on gender bias. Prosecutor easily demolished that argument with the evidence. Dashcam footage showed clear, erratic driving patterns. Breathalyzer results were well above legal limits. No room for interpretation or reasonable doubt. The funniest part was when her lawyer brought up the female officer request. Tried to argue it proved she was being discriminated against. Prosecutor pointed out that we actually honored her request, and the female officer still arrested her following the same procedures. Judge actually laughed at that point during the proceedings. Case was pretty much over right there. Woman got convicted on all charges as expected. 6-month license suspension, hefty fines, community service. Had to complete an alcohol education program. Probation for 18 months with random testing. Could have been worse if she'd just accepted responsibility initially. Fighting it in court only made things more expensive for her. Ran into Monica at the station a few days after court. She mentioned the woman had tried contacting her again, sent messages through various social media platforms, still trying to establish some kind of personal connection. Monica blocked her on everything and filed a harassment report. Some people really can't take no for an answer. Carter heard about the harassment attempts and found it hilarious. Said it proved his point about people never learning lessons. Woman still thought she could manipulate the situation somehow, even after being convicted and sentenced by a judge. Some folks live in their own reality where rules don't apply. Consequences never seem to sink in for certain personality types. Started thinking about how this incident affected my perspective. Made me more aware of people's unconscious biases and assumptions. Everyone has preconceived notions about how things should work, but reality rarely matches our expectations or theories. Professional standards exist for good reasons. They ensure equal treatment regardless of personal characteristics. Talked to some veteran officers about similar experiences. Turns out this pattern is more common than I initially thought. People regularly try to game the system using identity politics, requesting specific demographics of officers to handle their cases, assuming shared characteristics will lead to preferential treatment. Strategy rarely works, but people keep trying it anyway. One sergeant told me about a case involving racial profiling claims. Suspect demanded an officer of the same race handle his arrest. Got exactly what he requested, but still got charged with everything. Professional standards don't change based on officer demographics. Law is law, regardless of who's enforcing it. People seem to struggle with this basic concept. Monica and I started working together more often after this incident, developed a good partnership handling difficult domestic calls. Her calm professionalism complements my more analytical approach. We've dealt with several similar cases of people trying to manipulate situations. Gender, race, age, profession. People try every angle imaginable. Professional training kicks in regardless of personal feelings. Had another case recently involving a male suspect. Guy was arrested for domestic violence by a female officer. Demanded a male officer because women don't understand men. I handled his transport and booking procedures, followed exact same protocols the female officer used. Same charges, same consequences, same everything. Starting to see patterns in how people try to avoid accountability. Always looking for angles and excuses instead of accepting responsibility. Identity politics becomes a shield against facing consequences. Personal responsibility gets replaced by victimhood narratives. System isn't perfect, but it's designed to be fair and consistent. People game themselves more than they game the system. That original drunk driving woman became something of a legend. Other officers heard the story and started sharing similar experiences. Created an informal collection of ridiculous excuses and manipulations. Helps new officers prepare for the creativity people show avoiding consequences. Human nature reveals itself in fascinating ways under pressure. Stress strips away pretense and shows people's true character. Carter's retirement party included stories about the most absurd arrests. Our feminist drunk driver made the top 5 list. Everyone had similar tales of people trying to manipulate situations. Veteran officers weren't surprised by anything anymore. Decades of experience teach you to expect the unexpected. People's capacity for self-deception is apparently limitless. Moral of the story is pretty simple when you think about it. Your identity doesn't get you out of consequences for bad decisions. Professional standards apply to everyone equally regardless of demographics. Assumptions about special treatment usually make you look foolish. Drunk driving is illegal regardless of your gender or political beliefs. Actions have consequences, no matter how you try to frame the situation. Who could have predicted that outcome besides literally everyone except her?